Zigzag in One, a place where we honestly discuss how to embrace the zigs and the zags in our crazy lives. Running away is not an option. Living in defeat is not an option. Instead, learning how to keep moving forward is what we'll do together, one nugget of wisdom at a time. Your host is Melanie Brown. She's navigated a few zigs and zags in her life with the determination to never give up. Expect great stories and lots of laughs. Are you ready? Let's do it.
Thanks for joining me for today's episode of the ZIGZAG in One podcast. I'm your host, Melanie Brown. Guys, I promise we are in store for lots of laughs with my guest, Tammy Whitehurst. She's going to confess all she's learned after losing the control freak mentality. And I bet some of you out there can understand that. And she has replaced it with joy. I know you are going to hear the joy in her voice. Tammy and her husband Davis have been married for 23 years, and they live in Texas. You're going to hear that heavy Texas accent, but it is just precious. They have 4 grown children and 2 grandchildren. She's a writer, a speaker, a podcaster, and the co-owner of the Christian Communicators Conference. She admits she's a talker and she loves people, which makes her a fun and passionate speaker. You're going to see what I mean once we get started. Here's a few more fun things about Tammy. Her favorite color is cheetah. Yep, you heard right. She loves the color cheetah, kind of like I like the color October. And she firmly believes we are never too old for a new beginning. I can't wait for y'all to meet my friend Tammy. I invite you to join our conversation. Welcome to the ZIGZAG in One podcast. I am super excited to have my guest today, Tammy Whitehurst. I found her through a Christian Communicators website, and she is the co-founder. And let's just say this, I have been looking at her stuff on Facebook. She is excited and joyful and fun and beautiful, and we are going to have such a great time today. Welcome, Tammy.
Thank you so much. It's good to be here all the way from Texas to visit with you. I love talking with a Southern sister.
You got it, and I am happy to have you. Well, let's get started. I know from what I've read about you that you have faced some struggles in your path, or what we call zigzags. Tell me a little bit about the things that you have faced and how you fought to overcome and find joy in the journey.
Well, I will begin by saying thank you so much for having me here. And as far as zigzags, life is so much like that. Life is such a zigzag. And I have had some zigzags, and, we're going to share a lot about that today. I'm going to start by saying this, though. Life is what we make of it. And what I mean by that is we can make believe, we can make memories, we can make some noise, we can make a mistake or 2 or 3. We can make an entrance, we can make it work, and sometimes, just sometimes, we can make up for lost time. So that is one of the things that when I think back to the zigzags, zigzagging to me has a lot to do with the decisions that sometimes we made. And for me, some of them were decisions I made, and some of them were decisions that were made for me. But I know that I had heart surgery when I was 38 years old. Last thing I saw coming.
Goodness.
Oh, I had kids in school, and I was a school teacher at the time, and there was just my life was too busy to have.
Preach it.
That's right. I was busy. And, I think one of the things that I was shown was that busyness is not a spiritual gift. And so there are things in the world that will slow you down. When you have heart surgery, that's going to slow you down. And when I slow down, what that does is give me the opportunity to get closer to my Creator, to get closer to the Lord. And whenever you have things that are totally out of your control, oh my goodness, you do run to the one who is in control. So
absolutely. So tell me, did you have any symptoms leading up to it? Did you know you were having heart issues and maybe you weren't paying attention to them?
well, no, I actually had none. And I've always been like a bull wanting to bust out of the gate. I buck. I've always been an ADD, over the top energy from the time I get up to the time I go to bed. So no, I wasn't tired. Nothing like that was going on. What actually happened was I began to have a series of mini strokes, or what they call TIA.
I know exactly what you're talking about. You're preaching to someone who knows firsthand what that's like.
Yes. I was having several of those, and all of it happened within a 1 day time frame. It was just like, it was when it was going on. My daughter saw it, then my husband saw it, and my husband called my mom, who is an RN nurse, and she said, "You need to get in the emergency room now." And so they got me to the emergency room, and what it was I was having TIAs, and the neurologist who was on call, he said, "I do believe that this may be something different. I think that this may be heart related." And it was an area in my heart that was, he decided. Now, I am no doctor, so I'm not going to be talking in medical terms, really. I'm going to say it in the layman's terms that he described it to me. There was an area of my heart that was very spongy. He said it kind of looked like a sponge, if you can visualize what that looks like. And it was causing issues. It was causing problems, which were as a result was the TIAs. And so they went in, they did heart surgery, and they put a device, an implant is what it's called. They put an implant in my heart, and it popped open on both sides of my heart. And then the muscle has since then grown over that. And I'm fine. I don't take medication for it, don't do anything like that, but it rocked my world at the time.
Why? Let's stop for just a second. Tell me why it rocked your world.
Because everything was just, everything was going along great, or so I thought.
And you hit a zigzag.
Yes. And all of a sudden I hit a hard bump in the road, and everything had to come to a halting stop. Yeah. I had to cancel things. I had to rest. I'm not a rester. That's just not really something that I do very much of. And so whenever I have to rest, it's probably because I've been forced to do that. And that forced me to do it. But that also forced me to see a lot of things that I've missed. It forced me to stop, and it forced me to prioritize better. Meaning, I had to put God first, my family second, my ministry third. And a lot of times for a person who's like me, who has a tendency to be a workaholic, confessions of a control freak here, I had to stop and figure out what the most important things were and line them up.
Did you have them out of order?
Oh my goodness. Girl, it's a daily struggle. I have to always get back up, report for duty, be obedient, and put everything back in order for the day. Yes, it is something that I have to work at. And it's something that I have a really good friend who will quickly get me in line if my priorities are out of whack.
That's a good friend right there.
You better believe it, because I'm an acquired taste girl. And we've been friends. We've been friends since our 20s. And she was a teacher with me when I taught middle school. It's probably why I loved teaching middle school, because the ADD is crazy. I'm hyper. I'm all of that kind of stuff. And I can squirrel. I mean, I can just get distracted very quickly. But she is the type person who can quickly get me back in line so that I can focus on what I need to focus on. She's a great friend. Great friend. We all need that kind of friend.
Like it.
She is.
Yeah. Well, I can understand your heart for middle school kids. I have taught mostly middle school kids for my 20 years. And they're just a unique little breed, and they're so fun.
I agree.
Tell me what kinds of things you learned, not just about prioritizing and those kind of things. What other kind of things did you learn when you hit that zigzag about yourself, about your health? Did you start making some changes?
Oh, I definitely began to make changes. Well, first of all, I got in the Word a whole lot more, and I searched for answers in the Word. And I have always been a talker. You know, I grew up and I was getting N's in conduct in school because they would always say she won't stop talking. I was one of those people who I wasn't necessarily an annoying kind of talker. I just loved people. And I still do. And I love stories, and I loved making people laugh, and all of the things that that sometimes we need to get a grip on our lip.
Ooh.
I learned that sometimes that we have to get still, and getting still is something that was tough for me. But as an adult, when I was a kid, I used to sit at the back of the class because that's where you get away with things. As an adult, I sit, anytime I go to any type of conference, anything like that, I'm going to sit at the front in a situation like that because I need to focus on what's being taught. And so that stopping the heart issue made me stop and to get to the front and to realize what I needed to focus on. And it made me realize that his grip don't slip. So I had to be held in the palm of his hand.
Well, it sounds like even though that was a zigzag in your path, a struggle, it sounds like many things that were good came out of that time. And that's what I find to be true in the women that I interview, is that the zigzags that we face oftentimes help us to refine things that need to be refined. And we find a passion, we find a purpose. And it sounds like it helped you turn things around, refine things, and to be passionate about sending out the message of helping others.
You know, it did. What it did was open up my eyes to see things that I'd never slowed down to really see. It made me realize that what I often would do is I would step out on one-footed faith. And what I mean by that is I would step out on one foot and say, Lord, I'm going to do this for you. But I would keep plan B, C, D, E, F, G in my back pocket just in case he didn't come through. And
that's the control freak part.
Yes, it is. That's the control freak part. And I've always been a person who likes to check the box, check the list, get things done, driven by that kind of stuff. I love it. But also, when you are that kind of person, it's real easy to get on that slippery slope of being a control freak. And if you're a control freak, you're going to run people from you, not people towards you. And so it was during that time that I really had to take a hard look at what I was trying to control, because at that moment, I had no control. And I can tell you that if I had to go through it again, I would say, yes, please put me through that again, because you refined me, Lord. Mm-hmm. You showed me so much. I wasn't even at that point, I wasn't a professional speaker at the time. That was almost like the beginning. I always had a desire in my heart to be a speaker. And I firmly believe that my first audience was behind a podium in a classroom. So 12-year-olds were my first audience. But what God showed me was that he had a different plan than what I had. But I had to get still enough so that he could show it to me. And it just began to take a whole different zigzag, if we want to call it. It zigged kind of to the bad side, and where I dealt with some fear, and I dealt with wondering what tomorrow would bring. So instead of trying to control what the next day might bring, I had to trust what he would pull in my way and put in my way. And one of the things that I have discovered, Melanie, is that God does not let things fall in our lap. He just doesn't drop things in our lap, but he does put them within our reach. if we're willing to step out on faith and trust him. And that is what that entire medical zigzag in my life did for me.
That stepping out on faith is a hard thing to do, because if you are a control freak, you're wanting to see what's going to be on the other side. And he's saying, trust me.
Right.
And that's where the control is the control is with him. He is in control. He is not going to make you jump out on the water, so to speak, without knowing what's going to be on the other side. He knows, we don't. Right. But as somebody else who has issues with wanting things to be in control and checking things off the list and all of those. So I relate to you in a big kind of way, but it is about that jumping out in faith and knowing that God only wants the best for us. And when we do, I have found, and you probably have as well, that what's on the other side when we do that and we jump out is far better than we could have ever imagined for ourselves. And that's the joy of trusting God to me.
You're exactly right. You know, the impossible is possible with him. And so our mind cannot even fathom what he has planned for us if we will just stop and if we will just let him take the reins instead of us. And like I said earlier, his grip don't slip. But some people don't like to admit that they are a control freak, me included. And I will just give you a few examples. If you're a person who likes to help people drive, if you're a person who has a hard time delegating, if you're a person who when you go to any type of event and you're thinking the whole time how much better you could do it, if you are one of these people who give people a lot of shoulda, coulda, wouldas, unsolicited suggestions, as I call them, constructive criticism, what I had to realize was advice given without being asked for was really criticism.
Oh.
And so I had to, and I'm not saying, I was not one of these people that walked around that nobody liked. It wasn't like that. But it was a situation where I was a lot of times the boss. A lot of times I was the leader. I was on different committees and things like that. And so it was a situation to where some people run from those kind of jobs. I ran to those kind of jobs because I loved those kind of jobs. But what happens with that is that you are the one who's always seen out front, and you forget about the ones who are in the back making it possible for you to be out front. Yes. And sometimes the Lord will humble us, me included, so that I can see what it's like to be behind the scenes. And behind the scenes, let me tell you, there's no unimportant parts ever.
I would agree with that because we had firsthand knowledge of that when our son went to a performing arts high school and he started taking classes for the tech side of it, not being on the stage, not singing, not dancing, not acting. He did the lighting, the sound, the set design, all of that. And he taught us over those 4 years when he was at that high school that the show cannot go on.
That's right.
Those actors, those actresses, any of those people that have the most beautiful voices, none of that can happen without the stuff going on behind the scenes. So you're right, that those jobs are so very important.
That's exactly right. And it doesn't mean that if you are a control freak, that doesn't mean that you're a bad person. What it means is that you've taken control of a position that God wants to take control of so that he can use you. And the way that you know that that you might be a control freak is that instead of people running to you, sometimes they do run from you. And what happens is we're missing out on the best things in life. We really are. We're missing out on the best things in life because there's so much more. There's so much more to this world in the short time that we're here than what we think we can control. Yeah. There's so much more to it. So if we really get honest about the situation, we have to realize, what is the priority level? Is it a somebody wrote this, and I can't remember who it was. They said, is it a hangnail, a headache, or a hand grenade?
Ooh, that's a great way to categorize things.
Yes, I think it was Jim Watkins who said that. I'm not certain. But is it a hangnail, a headache, or a hand grenade? And that is something that came to my mind often because that helped me realize the priorities that I needed to set.
Fantastic piece of information to chew on, because that is something helpful as you approach any situation that aggravates you or upsets you, or you want to change or have an opinion about. You filter it through that, and then you really realize the importance of it. I love that.
Thank you.
I'm thinking there are other things that maybe you have experienced a zigzag that play into this whole control. Am I wrong?
Well, when it comes to control, some of the things that you end up doing that will definitely, if you have your hands tangled all into the control, is that eventually you're going to realize that there is no perfection. You cannot be absolutely perfect. And so what happens is you can fall face forward into the pit of depression. And I certainly have overcome that, because there was a time in my life whenever I did fall face forward into depression for a little bit. And that is not a place where I ever wanted to stay. But I will say that the things that I have been through in my life, the zigzags that I have been through in my life, have taught me how to relate. Have taught me how to relate with people so much better, because the things that I've gone through in my life have made it to where I can understand the shoes that other people are walking in. And it's only whenever you have empathy that you can help other people. So some of the things that I've learned besides that is that, you know, I tried to have the perfect family, the perfect everything. Most of our families are 2 clowns shy of a full-blown circus. Everybody.
I love that.
We are, and families are a lot like pecan pie, a whole lot of nuts held together by a firm foundation.
Girl, you have some great ways of looking at things.
You know, we do. We have to, there's an old hymn that goes, turn your eyes up on Jesus. We have to turn our eyes up on Jesus, because a merry heart does good like medicine. And
Yes.
if we have our mind wrapped around being a control freak, we will hit the bottom of the pit. And depression is always waiting on us there. So we need a whopping dose of a merry heart. And I tell you what, it'll kick us up a notch, because it gets us to where we realize what I call living life on the sunny side. And we all want to live life on the sunny side. And part of that is knowing that life doesn't get easier, but we get better at it.
I think we get stronger as we face the zigzags. And when other situations occur, we can look at it in a different perspective because of what we've learned, which is what you've been sharing about the things that you could have only learned by going through the struggles that you have faced. And you're right, there is joy to be found on the other side. And again, it's like that trust that you were talking about earlier, that leap of faith. There is joy on the other side of struggle. We just have to trust that God is going to take us there, and not kicking and screaming, because that doesn't help at all.
That's right. And if we're kicking and screaming, we're cranky.
Yes, ma'am.
I always say cranky people need to be pantsed, because they have their pants pulled up to their armpits, and somebody's going to pants them at some point. But life may be the one that pants us. Life may be the one who jerks everything down, and we got to start all over. But sometimes starting all over is exactly what we need to do. Because,
yes, ma'am.
Yes, we're never too old for a new beginning. Never.
Yes. How do you find this joy? I mean, I see it on your face, and I hate the listeners can't see your joy. And I have seen it on your Facebook post. You've been through some really serious struggles. You faced some difficult zigzags, but what I know of you, and it's not as much as I hope to know in the future, but there's joy. Where did you find this joy?
I will tell you, the joy that I have comes from Jesus. The joy of the Lord is my strength. When you've been to the bottom, he extends the hand that can take you out of the pit. And I had to really dig my heels in. And I had to study his word. And little by little, things for me don't happen overnight. Rarely do things just boom and everything changes. But things began to change when I stood on the solid rock and I firmly believed that I was not going to live my life by the mistakes of my past, but I was going to live my life by the truth of his word. Then and only then did life get increasingly more merry, better, more joyful, more laughter came into my life. And I realized that there comes a time, and for most of us, we do deal with this. There comes that time whenever we realize that life is short. We might as well smile while we still have teeth. I'm telling you, because cranky gets us nowhere. And I was on a plane one time with a woman, and I was really wanting to sit totally by myself, Melanie, because I was headed to Minnesota to speak, and I really wanted to go over everything, because you hear this heavy accent, and I have to take this heavy accent everywhere that I go to speak. And these people were a little nervous for me to come, so they sent me a book, How to Speak Bemidji.
Oh, my goodness.
So I needed to really read this book the whole time that I was on this plane, and I didn't want anybody sitting beside me. Well, as the plane was about to close the door, in comes this woman, and she is panting, and she has been running down the runway to get there. And I'm thinking, oh, please don't let her sit by me. And she got closer and closer and closer until finally she reaches up, she puts her bag right ahead of my seat. And I thought, oh, I really needed to do this, God. I really needed to read this book. And she sits down and she said, hi, what is your name? I told her. She said, my name's Rachel. And she said, what do you do, Tammy? And I thought, no, please don't, please don't. I said, well, I'm a Christian motivational speaker. And her exact words to me, well, I'm a Christian, I'm a woman, motivate me.
Oh, great.
And that was my exact words. Oh, great is what I thought inside. And I told her, I said, Rachel, I really need to read this book because I'm speaking. I told her the whole story. She said, put down the book. I said, what do you mean? She said, I'm from Bemidji, Minnesota. I can tell you exactly what you need to know. You see, I had one plan, God had another. And his plan was so much better. And so what we have to do is we have to pack up the icy hot. As we get older, pack up the icy hot, the CPAP machines, the bifocals, and the Depends. And we have to know that God's not finished with us yet. And he has big plans to take it to the limit one more time if we'll just let him do that. And he does that in ways that are not ways that we could do, but only he could do. I'm leaving out of Dallas, Texas, and there's a woman sitting by me from Bemidji, Minnesota. Only God.
Only God. That's right.
Right.
Well, our time is coming to an end, and I could just keep talking to you. You're so much fun. But I want to make sure to leave time so that we can talk about what your one takeaway is, what you want the listeners to remember after they are finished listening to today's episode. So what is your one takeaway?
If I had to sum everything up, Melanie, into one thing that people could absolutely bite on, chew on, and want to do, it would be this. And I want them to really think about this. Cemeteries are filled with dreams that were never accomplished, degrees that were never received, books that were never written, singers that never sung, teachers that never taught, speakers who never spoke, and it goes on and on and on. We can't die with buried treasure. So every single day that you wake up, you report for duty, and you ask God to show you how to do what He wants you to do. That plan is so much better. And every single one of us was made for a purpose. Let's get out there and achieve it, and don't die with buried treasure.
Wow, that is excellent. Just beautiful. Thank you so much. I have had so much fun. I am so glad that we were able to connect and for you to be on the podcast today, Tammy.
Thank you. Thank you so much for asking me. And I just enjoyed getting to know you. I look forward to our paths crossing again one day.
Well, let's make that happen.
All right.
Thank you, my friend. And do what Tammy said. Don't die with buried treasure. That is something I'm going to take with me as well. Thank you, Tammy.
You're welcome.
Wow, that was super fun for me. I hope you guys had a few good laughs too. Tammy is super funny. And here's the thing, I think she's super wise. I can't quit thinking about her one takeaway. Don't die with buried treasure. Honestly, I thought about those words for a few days after we recorded her interview, and I took her at her word. For years, I have wanted to learn about speaking, and I couldn't think of a better conference to sign up for than the one that Tammy facilitates. So I'm not dying with that buried treasure anymore. I am jumping in with both feet in September, and it's pretty bold of me to be sharing this with you because that means I'm accountable. And yes, I'm going to be accountable to you, the listener. If you want more of Tammy's joy and wisdom, you can find her at tammywhitehurst.com, and you can connect with her on her Facebook page, Tammy Whitehurst Speaker. I love the Tuesday talks that she does. They're fun, they're informative. She talks about all kinds of different topics. Join her there. And join me for the next episode when I chat with Dr. Saundra Dalton-Smith about the 7 types of rest. Who knew that there were even 7 types of rest? In our fast-paced, goal-driven world, I know I'm talking your language, we don't just need sleep. We need rest, and she explains the difference. She's also going to explain how rest equals restoration. And don't we need that? Until then, keep moving forward.